Hello, welcome back to another video. I thought I'd do a sit-down video this week and talk about my experience with ADHD and some of the symptoms and the way they affect me in my life, because I feel like this is a video that I've wanted to make in general. If you don't know me, I was diagnosed with both ADHD and autism actually at the end of December 2020 at the ripe age of 27, and of course I had the whole storyline of not knowing what was wrong with me growing up and not knowing why I was different than everyone else. And I feel like videos like this, if there was a video like this when I was younger, telling me about ADHD and all the symptoms and stuff, I feel like I would have found out a lot sooner, you know? Back even a few years ago, there wasn't really a lot of information about this, like ADHD and the way it affected specifically women as well. A lot of the research about ADHD is being done from like young boys and men, because back in the day they thought ADHD only affected boys. Little did they know. So really only over the last few years there's been a rise, shall we say, in people being diagnosed, especially women, because now there's more research and people are more speaking up about their experiences and stuff. With tentative ADHD, the symptoms are a lot more internalized and you don't really always see them. There's a lot going on in the brain, but you might not always see what's going on, you know? Yeah, it can be difficult for a lot of women, and so we need to talk about more, you know? So this is what this video is for, and I hope it helps somebody. The first symptom I want to talk about is poor time management, or as it's known as time blindness. I know it's talked about a lot in the ADHD community, the fact that a lot of people with ADHD have no concept of time, and I usually can't tell if it's been 5 minutes or it's been an hour. I literally cannot tell. Time just passes by and I have no idea what's going on most of the time, honestly. Also, something that I struggle with is not knowing how long tasks are going to take. I always try and guesstimate how long a task is going to be, but I always guess wrong. 9 times out of 10 I will guess the amount of time wrong. Like, I think I can do my makeup in like 15 minutes, but it takes me like 25 minutes. It can be very frustrating because obviously I try and plan out my days, and especially when I have more going on and like I have a busier day, I like to plan out, you know, what to do and when to do it. But often my timings are all wrong and it messes me up and it messes my whole day up and I get really mad and frustrated, and it can be a very annoying thing to deal with. More often than not, I always underestimate timings, and I just, no matter how many times I do something, I just always seem to get it wrong. And I don't know how that happens, it just does. Also, something else that can happen is when you have an appointment at like 3 PM or something, you know, something later in the day, your brain can often go into waiting mode where you won't do anything for the whole entire day until that appointment, like you can't do anything. And often with the underestimating how long things will take, you end up being late for the appointment anyway, even though you've been waiting all day, because you start getting ready later than you need to. And so you end up running late and running out the door. That happens quite a lot to me, honestly, and I end up running for the bus because I've messed up my timings as always. So yeah, time blindness is a very difficult one for me. It's something that I struggle with quite a lot and it's very frustrating. Obviously having things like alarms, setting like alarms and stuff help, but honestly most of the time I forget to set the alarms anyway, so it doesn't really help me at all, you know. Next symptom I want to talk about is having a short attention span. Now, I know this is more common nowadays with the rise of like TikTok and short form content. Like, I feel like everyone has a short attention span these days, and I feel like it makes our brains even worse because you can't sit through more than like a 2-minute TikTok these days. Like, it's really bad. But of course, it's still a symptom of ADHD and something that I've been suffering with my whole life, really, not just like since TikTok came about. People with ADHD tend to have like a less storage space in their brain to like store memories, and things like pop out of their brain as quickly as it came in, you know? Like someone tells you to do something and then 2 minutes later, like, what? I have no idea what you were talking about, please. Obviously a very common problem that I have is people telling me to do something and then I go out the door to do it and then I walk out and then I have no idea what they said and I have to go back and ask again. And obviously people get really frustrated with me because they have to repeat themselves, and I get frustrated because they're getting frustrated, and it's just the whole situation, you know? When you're a very forgetful person, people will act like you don't care, like you don't care about what they're telling you, but obviously I care. It's just my brain doesn't function the way that other people's brains do, and so thoughts just disappear very quickly out of my brain. That's not really something I can control, and it's just very upsetting sometimes. A way I like to compare this to is, it's very random, but if you've ever played the game Sims, which I'm sure most people have, it's like when you tell a Sim to do something, like go and like do some cooking or something, and then you instantly like cancel the action, and then they just stand there like looking lost and confused, like with their hands in the air or something. That's what it feels like for me in real life. Another problem I want to talk about, which is kind of related, is difficulty concentrating on tasks. If a task is especially boring and tedious and I just don't want to do it, my brain can definitely really struggle with actually sitting down and doing it and like not getting distracted or drifting off or falling asleep or something, you know. It can be very difficult to like actually focus on a task and sit down and do something because there's just so much going on in your brain, like all the things you need to do and sort of random songs in your head and all sorts is happening up there, you know. It's just crazy. And so yeah, focusing on anything at one time can be very difficult. And unfortunately, it doesn't just happen to things I don't want to do, it can happen with things I do want to do as well. I want to sit down and like work on a cosplay or read a book or something, but my brain just cannot focus on the words or the things that I'm trying to sew or something. It's just honestly so hard to concentrate. It's like 20 million people shouting at you all at one time, all the time. No one can really focus in that kind of noise, you know? And sometimes with all the things happening in my head, sometimes a random to-do list thing comes up like, oh, I need to wash the dishes, and I'll go up and do the dishes and forget about the task that I'm doing, and then 10 minutes later I'll come back and be like, oh, this task, and then I sit down and I try and do it again, and then 5 minutes later I'm like, oh, I need to do this, and then I get up again. Your brain's just going round and you're just trying to sit down and just focus on that one task, but it just seems impossible sometimes, honestly. Unfortunately for me, and maybe for like many other people, my brain tends to focus more under pressure. When there's like a deadline, like, you know, I have something's due in like a couple of days time, I'm more likely to focus then than if something's like due in like a month's time, because my brain will think, oh, I can do that later. Again, that's like bad time management. I think I have more time than I do. The time goes like that. We all know the time disappears in like 2 seconds. But my brain thinks I have 20 million years of time. I could just chill for the next few weeks and I can just do it last minute, it's fine. But on the other side of that, the fourth thing I want to talk about is hyperfocus, which is, I was going to say the opposite to difficulty concentrating, but it's still on the same spectrum. But you know, I think for me, hyperfocus is actually pretty difficult to get into. I don't feel like I'm hyperfocused that often, but when I do get into it, sometimes I can be doing one thing for hours and hours and hours. And with some people, you know, when you get too hyper-focused, you can forget to like do anything else, like eat, drink, sleep. You kind of forget all your normal basic hygiene things and everything really. You just focus on that one thing and do nothing else for the whole entire day. Usually when somebody's in hyper-focus, it can also be difficult to get their attention. When I'm busy reading something or really like in the crafting zone and someone comes up to me and starts trying to talk to me, it can be very hard for my brain to like focus on them. I kind of like tune out everything around me and I just focusing on this one thing. You're kind of like in a bubble really, in your hyper-focus bubble, and you don't really pay attention to literally anything or anybody else. Not on purpose, of course. You're not trying to ignore people, even though they might think you are ignoring them. Like you're not. You're just, your brain is just completely zeroed in on this one thing that you need to do, and you need to do it now, and nothing else matters. Hyper-focus can be good. It's gotten me through times where I need to like get projects done and cosplays and whatever and get emails done. But it can also be bad because you can also hyper-focus on the wrong things, like scrolling through social media for like 7 hours or reading a book all day and doing absolutely nothing else. But you can hyper-focus on many things really, so not without even realizing sometimes, because again, time blindness. Hours can pass when you're doing something and you don't realize until it's dark outside and you're like, oh, I haven't eaten for the last like 8 hours or something. So yeah, it can be helpful, but it can also be very frustrating when you feel like you've wasted your day doing something that you didn't want to be doing, but your brain just got stuck doing it. And sometimes you realize and sometimes you don't, but either way you can't get out of it. You're just kind of stuck in that loop of doing that thing until your brain says it's done. The fifth thing I want to talk about is disorganisation. Now this is definitely something that I'm not very good with. When I was younger, I remember I used to get in trouble a lot for having like a really messy bedroom. But to be honest, my bedroom was so bad sometimes where you couldn't even see the floor, you know, there was just stuff everywhere, clothes, toys, things everywhere. You couldn't see like any surface. You couldn't see my desk, you couldn't see my floor. It was really bad at some points. And I always like wondered why I couldn't keep it clean. I got mad at myself, you know, 'cause obviously I didn't know back then when I was young, like why I couldn't keep things clean and why everything was everywhere. And every time I cleaned it up, like 2 days later, it was just a mess again. And I had no idea why it was doing this to me. Like I thought the room was against me. I think one of the problems is we tend to have the out of sight, out of mind mentality where if we can't actually see something in front of us, then it doesn't exist. The item is just non-existent. And so I think because of that, a lot of people tend to place things in places where they can see them at all times, like they just put them on their desk or on their bed or on the floor. It starts out being a small pile of stuff and then that pile just grows and grows until like a massive mountain, and then you don't realize and you're like, oh, I should probably clean this up. And then you try and put stuff away and put it into safe places, but then you forget where the safe places are, and then you get mad because you can't find the stuff that you need, and then you end up ripping a whole room apart trying to find one thing, and then oh no, it's a mess again. It's just a whole circle really. That's why we tend to lose track of things very easily and end up trying to run out the house with our keys and our phone and all sorts, because we put them down somewhere and we don't know where we've put it down because our brains like forgot it was there. It just all just blended into the mess that's everywhere. And also, of course, I struggle with putting things back where they belong. I'll get something out from somewhere and be like, oh, I'll put it here, and I'll just put it back in a minute, and then 28 days later, it's still there on the desk where it's not supposed to be because I didn't put it back. And then that happens with like 20 million different things, and then again, it ends up with my room being a mess and me being confused on the floor, as usual. The last thing I actually want to talk about is being overwhelmed all the time. Now, I feel like this isn't as talked about as all the other ones. I feel like they're all like very common symptoms and things that everyone says in these videos, but I feel like that being overwhelmed is something that not everyone mentions. Obviously, as I said earlier, with our brains, there's always so much going on up there all of the time, and it can be a lot really, you know, and sometimes it can end up with you being just completely stuck. I definitely have a lot of trouble with starting tasks and doing the things that I need to do because my brain is just so overloaded with things and I just can't focus on anything, and that just often leads to me being paralyzed, like laying in bed or sitting at my desk. And on the outside it looks like I'm just like there playing games like normally, or just there chilling in bed reading and scrolling on my phone, but in reality my brain is just screaming at me, like telling me that I need to get up and do things and that I'm getting really mad and upset at myself. You can't tell on the outside most of the time, but inside my brain is just very mad. And it's not that I don't want to do things, it's that I can't. Unless you've really experienced the feeling, I feel like that's kind of a difficult one to explain to people. They don't understand why you just can't do things like normal people can. They're like, why don't you just get up and do this? And I'm just like, I can't. But they're like, why? And I'm like, I can't explain that to you. I'm not quite sure what to say. I wish I knew more of a way to deal with that one, honestly. Of course, like writing things down sometimes can help, or just talking to people, but sometimes it just feels like no matter what you do, you're just like completely frozen and you just can't move. And sometimes I spend days sitting or laying, not doing anything, just kind of blankly staring at my screen because my brain just won't let me. And yeah, I feel like not a lot of people understand that one. I don't even understand myself barely, so it's very hard to explain to other people, I'm not gonna lie. But yeah, I thought I'd add that one in the end because there's definitely something that one of the actually main things that I struggle with a lot, honestly. So yeah, those are some of the symptoms that I have and some of the things that I struggle with. Of course, there's like loads more to ADHD. And I should have said this at the beginning, but obviously everyone's different. Like ADHD is a spectrum, that everyone has the same traits and symptoms. Some people have some things, some people have other things, you know? So, of course, not everybody relates to everything, but I hope, you know, somebody found this helpful and somebody can relate. And yeah, let me know if you want more videos like this. I might do more like this in the future if people like it. But for now, thank you so much for watching the video. And if you got to the end, then thank you so much. I appreciate that. And yeah, hopefully I'll see you guys next week for another video. Goodbye for now.